Hi there, it's Paul here, and this is my introduction to VBA for Microsoft Excel. Couple of things. I'm using 2016, but 2013, which is the one that you are likely to be using, is very similar. First thing to do is, as I look here at the Office ribbon, I need to have a special tab open called Developer. To do that, I go here, I click on More Commands, customize the ribbon, and there I choose the Developer tab, click OK, and it appears up here on the ribbon. This tab is really important for Visual Basic for applications. If I click Visual Basic here, this opens the VBA Editor for Microsoft Excel. I just close it again using the arrow there. I can also open it by doing Alt and F11, like so. So this editor is where we code our VBA. You might be asking, what's the point of VBA? VBA is a way of improving the functionality of most Microsoft Office applications, but we're just interested in Microsoft Excel. So this is the editor. Over here you have this sort of menu tree, and you have VBA project book 1, because my spreadsheet is currently called book 1, and you have various objects. The list is quite sparse at the moment, but we will improve on that as we go along. There's only one sheet in my Microsoft Excel workbook at the moment, and that is called Sheet 1. And so that is referred to here as a Microsoft Excel object. If I just make the editor minimize it there, if I make another sheet, 2, 3, 4, if I call this one VBA, and go back to the editor, I see that I now have 4 different objects, and their names are also visible in brackets. This final one here is called This Workbook. This is code that will affect the whole Excel workbook that I have created. When you write code, you can run it with this button here, and at the moment there isn't anything for it to actually run, so I just cancel that. You can also stop the code with the stop button or pause it. This is basically an IDE, an integrated development environment for a programming language, and that language is VBA. VBA, Visual Basic for Application, has its roots in Microsoft Visual Basic, which was very popular for about 15 years. Visual Basic became visualbasic.net about 10 years ago. But VBA carries on as a very useful tool for improving the functionality of Office applications, and particularly for us in this unit, spreadsheets. What I'm going to do now is add a simple piece of code to this particular Excel worksheet. I go to Insert, and I'm given the option to add a user form, which, as the name suggests, is a form that the user will interact with in Excel, or a module. Modules are where we store pieces of code that make the functionality of our spreadsheet happen. We won't be worrying about class module. So if I add a new module here, it comes up with a default of module 1, and I'm going to write a simple Hello World app. So I write public sub, so it's a subroutine, and I will call it Paul Test, and I open my brackets, start a new line, and it's already come up with end sub, as it's detected the presence of a subroutine already. Now, one of the fundamentals of programming is declaring variables, and we do that in Visual Basic by doing dim, which stands for dimension. Dim, let's say user input as string. And you'll notice that IntelliSense is kicking in here to help me write good code. So we're really pleased that Microsoft has included that. So what I'm saying here is I would like to set aside some space in the memory for a variable which is called user input, and I'm telling VBA that I want that user input to be a string, so usually some sort of word or string of characters. Now, having defined that variable, I'm going to set it a value. So I now say here user input equals hello world. Smiley face. You'll notice I don't terminate these lines of code with any semicolons or anything like that. That's just as is here. And what I do now is, this is one of the first little useful bits of code. I'm going to ensure that whichever cell I go to, it's going to write hello world. And I do that by using this active cell command. If I click on full stop, I can see that active cell, which is basically a type of class, has lots of functions or methods associated with it. And the one that I want is the method to set a value for a cell in Excel. Active cell dot value equals user input. So I said just now that this piece of code, this module here, would allow me to click in any cell on any workbook and it would write hello world like this. So does it do that? Well, if I click the run button here, which I can also access by clicking F5 and then go back to my workbook, it shows that the cell that I was on there has come up with hello world. Let's make sure that's not a fluke. Let's try it again. And again. And that is indeed working. So this little tutorial has introduced you to VBA. It's shown you how to find the developer tab for the ribbon. It's shown you the basics of the Microsoft Visual Basic for Applications editor. It's told you what these objects are and the fact that modules are stored here, pieces of code that we use to improve the functionality of our spreadsheet, and that we write the code here and then we run the code using the run button. And we've also shown how to define a variable, and one of our first really useful bits of code here is active cell.value, which will actually write something that we want into cells that we choose. So thanks for watching this, and I'll catch up with you in the next video.